My name is Zoe. I'm 32 years old, and if there's one thing I'm good at, it's curating things. My job is to walk into a sterile white room and fill it with art that tells a story, that creates a mood. I do the same thing with my life. My husband, Leo, is 34. He's a high school history teacher. He's dependable. That's the word everyone uses for him. Dependable Leo. He's like a comfortable old armchair. You don't get excited about it, but you know it's always going to be there. Our relationship is stable, solid. I'm the fire, he's the hearth. That's how I've always seen it. He provides the structure, the predictability, and I provide the life. That night, we were at a birthday party for his best friend, Greg. I didn't really want to go. It's always the same people, the same conversations about mortgage rates and school districts. But Leo loves his friends, and I play the part of the supportive wife. It's part of the curation, you see. The house was warm and loud, smelling of beer and baked brie. I made an effort. I wore a silk dress that made me stand out from the sea of sensible sweaters and jeans. While Leo was immediately swallowed up in a conversation about some historical documentary, I floated. I'm good at floating. I can talk to anyone, make anyone laugh. I like the feeling of eyes on me. It's like a warm light. A few hours in, we were all gathered in the living room, a loose circle of people on couches and chairs. Someone, I don't remember who, brought up one of those silly hypothetical questions. Okay, everyone, they said. Be honest. If things went south, like truly bad, do you trust your partner to protect you? It was a stupid, drunken question, but it hung in the air. I felt a smirk pull at my lips. I looked over at Leo, who was sitting beside me, nursing the same beer for the last hour. Quiet, steady, dependable Leo. Before I even thought it through, the words were out of my mouth. Oh, God no, I said, with a light, airy laugh. I'd have to be the one protecting Leo. The circle erupted in laughter. A big, satisfying wave of it. I felt that little thrill, the one you get when you land a perfect punchline. So, I kept going. I'm serious, I continued, gesturing towards him playfully. A few months ago, our takeout order was completely wrong. They gave us someone else's dinner entirely. And this man, I paused for dramatic effect. This man just stood there and said, well, maybe we can try this instead. He wouldn't even call the restaurant back. More laughter. People were leaning in now. I was the star of the show. So, no, I concluded, patting his knee. If a burglar broke in, I'd be grabbing the baseball bat while Leo would probably be offering him a cup of tea and asking about his childhood. It was a huge hit. Even Greg was wiping a tear from his eye, slapping Leo on the back. She's got you there, buddy, he choked out between laughs. It was just a joke. That's what it was. We tease each other. But as the laughter died down, I noticed Leo wasn't laughing. He wasn't even smiling. He just sat there, his jaw tight, staring into his beer bottle. He had this look, this stillness that made the room feel suddenly cold. I felt a flash of irritation. Don't ruin the moment, I thought. It's funny. Just laugh. But he didn't. He just sat there. My phone buzzed in my purse. I subtly pulled it out under the cover of the couch cushion. A text from Roman. This place sounds dead. Thinking of you. A real smile, a genuine one, finally touched my lips. I quickly typed back. You have no idea. Wish I was with you. When I looked up, Leo was standing. He didn't say a word. He just picked up his jacket from the back of the chair and walked out of the room. He didn't even look at me. The mood shifted instantly. The laughter evaporated. Greg looked from the empty doorway back to me, his expression confused. Is he okay? He's fine, I said, waving a dismissive hand, trying to keep the party alive. He's probably just tired. You know, Leo, but inside, I was furious. He had just sucked all the air out of the room. He had ruined my moment, all because he couldn't take a simple joke. The Uber ride home was silent, filled only by the tinny sound of the driver's radio and the loud thrum of my own anger. How could he do that? Just walk out. Humiliate me by making it seem like I was the bad guy. When I got home, the house was dark except for a single lamp in the living room. Leo was sitting in that armchair, his armchair just sitting there in the quiet. What was that about? I asked, dropping my keys on the console table with a clatter that felt louder than it should have. He looked up. His face wasn't angry. It was something worse. It was tired. You shouldn't have said those things, Zoe. I scoffed. kicking off my heels. Oh, please. It was a joke. Everyone was laughing. I wasn't, he said, his voice flat. My friends were laughing at me because my wife was telling them I was a coward. Don't be so dramatic. I never used that word. You didn't have to, he said. You made me sound pathetic. You do it a lot. That stopped me. What is that supposed to mean? It means, he said, leaning forward, that you seem to enjoy pointing out my flaws in front of other people. It's like a sport for you. I felt a surge of indignation, hot and sharp. This was unbelievable. I was the one who had been abandoned at a party, and now I was the one being lectured? Okay, you know what? No, I said, turning to face him fully. You don't get to do this. You don't get to be embarrassed by a harmless joke, throw a silent tantrum, and walk out on your wife, leaving her to explain your little disappearing act. That was humiliating, Leo. What was I supposed to say? Oh, my husband's feelings got hurt, so he ran home? He just stared at me, his expression unreadable. My mind, unbidden, flashed to Roman. Roman would never have just sat there and taken it. But he also wouldn't have slunk away. He would have fired back with a joke of his own, something sharp and clever that would have turned the tables. He would have played the game with me. Leo didn't know how to play. He just broke the board and walked away. It wasn't harmless, Zoe, he said finally. And I'm tired of pretending it is. He stood up and walked past me, heading for the bedroom. The conversation was over. He had decided it was over. That night, we slept with a chasm between us in the bed. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my anger slowly curdling into a kind of justification. He was the problem. His sensitivity. His inability to keep up. I wasn't doing anything wrong by seeking out someone who actually appreciated my fire, who wasn't constantly trying to smother it with a wet blanket of sensibility. The affair with Roman hadn't started as something serious. He owned a restaurant I'd helped secure some art for. He was charming, ambitious, and he looked at me like I was the most fascinating creature he'd ever seen. It started with flirtatious texts, then long lunches that felt electric with unspoken things. It was an escape, a place where I felt seen, not as Leo's wife, but as Zoe. Lying there in the dark, next to my silent, wounded husband, I didn't feel guilty, I felt validated. Leo's reaction just proved my point. He couldn't handle me. Roman, on the other hand, thrived on it. The distance Leo was creating between us wasn't a wound. It was an opening, and I was more than ready to step through it. The weeks that followed were strange. The house was quiet. The silence wasn't angry anymore. It was heavy, like a thick fog. Leo existed around me, but not with me. We were roommates who shared a bed. Then, I started to notice changes. He started waking up early to go to the gym. At first, I didn't think much of it. But then I saw the physical shift in him. His shoulders seemed broader. He stood up straighter. The soft edges he'd developed from years of grading papers and quiet evenings were slowly being carved away. He started spending more time with Greg and his other friends, not just watching sports at a bar, but going on weekend hiking trips. Leo hated hiking. Or at least, the Leo I knew hated hiking. I found it all faintly ridiculous. It felt like a performance. Look at me. I'm a new man. I made a few sarcastic comments. Getting in touch with your inner lumberjack, are we? I'd say as he packed a bag. He'd just look at me, a calm, neutral expression on his face, and say, something like that. He wasn't rising to the bait. He wasn't arguing. He was just building a wall, brick by silent brick, and it was driving me crazy. My jokes, my jabs, my carefully crafted comments, they just hit the wall and fell flat. The power dynamic, the one where I set the tone and he reacted, was gone. My time with Roman became less of an escape and more of a necessity. He was my island of sanity. He's acting like a completely different person, I told Roman one afternoon, sitting across from him in a sun-drenched corner of his empty restaurant. He's probably just going through something, Roman said, reaching across the table to take my hand. His touch was warm and firm. Men get weird. They have their little midlife crises. Endeavor. But he's ignoring me, I said, loving the feeling of his thumb stroking my skin. It's like he doesn't care what I do or say anymore. His loss, Roman murmured, his eyes holding mine. If he can't appreciate what he has, someone else will. He was everything Leo wasn't. Decisive, passionate. He made me feel desired, not just tolerated. I told him everything about Leo, painting a portrait of a man who was boring, passive, and emotionally stunted. Roman, in turn, became my confidant, the hero who understood my plight. Then, a new kind of poison started to seep into our quiet home. Jealousy, but it was a strange, inverted kind. Leo mentioned a new teacher at his school. Her name was Sarah. She taught art, and they were collaborating on a cross-curricular project. He mentioned her casually, just in passing, but he mentioned her. Sarah thinks we should take the students to the museum next month, he said one night while we were washing dishes, the first normal thing he'd said to me in days. Sarah, huh? I replied, my voice a little too sharp. You two seem to be getting along. He glanced at me, a flicker of something in his eyes. She's a colleague, Zoe. But the seed was planted. In my mind, this Sarah became a character in our drama. I started to imagine them, laughing together in the teacher's lounge. I would pepper my conversations with little digs. Big plans with Sarah this week? I'd ask, my tone dripping with false sweetness. It was a deflection, of course. A way to cast a shadow on him, to make him the potential villain so I wouldn't have to look at my own reflection. If he was distracted by someone else, then my actions, my time with Roman, weren't really a betrayal, were they? They were just a parallel journey. The wall between us grew higher. Now, it wasn't just made of silence. It was made of my suspicion and his quiet, unreadable withdrawal. The house didn't feel like a home anymore. It felt like a beautifully curated, empty gallery. And I was starting to hate the exhibition. One Tuesday evening, the dam broke. I came home late from the gallery. We'd had a private viewing, and the air was still buzzing with champagne and fake praise. I walked in, exhausted, and found Leo waiting for me in the living room. The television was off. The only light came from the same single lamp that had been on the night of the party. It felt like a stage. We need to talk, he said. His voice was calm. It was the calmness that scared me. Leo, I'm really not in the mood. I sighed, dropping my bag. It's been a long day. This won't take long, he said, not moving. Please, sit down. Reluctantly, I sank onto the edge of the sofa opposite him. I braced myself for another lecture about the party, about his feelings. I was already preparing my counter-arguments. But he didn't mention the party. I feel like I don't know you anymore, Zoe, he began, his hands resting on his knees. You're here, but you're not. You're distant. You're always on your phone, and you angle it away from me when I walk into the room. My heart started beating a little faster. This was new territory. You come home late, smelling of wine I don't recognize. You have stories that don't quite add up. He wasn't accusing. He was just listing observations, like a historian laying out facts. I have a demanding job, I said, my voice tight. My life doesn't revolve around a school bell. He ignored the jab. He just kept looking at me, his gaze steady and unwavering. It felt like he was seeing right through me, through all the layers of curation, right down to the ugly, messy truth. I'm not a stupid man, Zoe, he said quietly. And I'm not a blind one. I've been trying to understand what's been happening with us. I thought it was me. I thought if I worked on myself, if I gave you space, things would get better. But they're not. They're getting worse. He took a breath, and then he asked the question that made the air in my lungs turn to ice. Zoe, are you having an affair? Panic. Pure, cold, liquid panic shot through my veins. My mind raced, searching for an exit, a plausible lie, a way to turn this around. And then, instinct took over. The instinct of a performer. My face crumpled. I made my eyes go wide with a believable, devastating shock. A tear, a single, perfect tear, welled up and slid down my cheek. How could you? I whispered, my voice breaking. How could you even ask me that? I stood up, wrapping my arms around myself as if I were physically wounded. After everything, after all these years, I let the righteous anger build. This was my stage now. You know what this is about? I said, my voice rising, trembling with manufactured pain. This is about you. You're insecure because you've been moping around for weeks, so you decide to project your own issues onto me. I have been here, in this house, walking on eggshells around your moods, trying to hold our marriage together while you disappear into yourself. And this is my reward? An accusation? You disgust me. It was a masterpiece of deflection. I was a victim, a martyr, the loyal wife being torn down by her husband's cruel and baseless suspicions. I turned and fled to the bedroom, slamming the door behind me. I threw myself on the bed and let the sobs come loud, theatrical sobs that I knew he could hear through the door. I was crying, but not from guilt. I was crying from the sheer, terrifying adrenaline of the lie. A few minutes later, the door opened a crack. It was Leo. "Zoe?" he said, his voice small. I didn't answer. I just kept my face buried in the pillow. I'm sorry, he stammered. "I shouldn't have. I'm sorry." He closed the door. I had won. I had stared into the abyss, and I had made the abyss apologize. As my sobs subsided, a cold, triumphant calm washed over me. I had handled it. Everything was going to be fine. For a week, an uneasy peace settled over the house. Leo was apologetic, almost timid. He made me coffee in the morning. He asked about my day. He was trying to repair the damage he thought he had caused. I played my part. I was fragile, but forgiving. I allowed him to slowly earn his way back into my good graces. Inside, I was buzzing with the thrill of my own cleverness. I had been so close to the edge, and I had pulled us back. I even scaled back my meetings with Roman, just for a little while, to be safe. The castle of sand I had built felt solid. I thought it could withstand anything. And then, a single piece of paper brought it all crashing down. It was a Saturday. I was getting ready to go out. I'd told Leo I was meeting an old friend from college when he walked into the bedroom. He was holding a credit card statement. My credit card statement. He must have gotten it from the mail. He didn't say anything. He just laid it on the bed in front of me. My eyes scanned the lines of text. And there it was. A charge from 2 weeks ago. The Haven Hotel. A boutique hotel on the other side of town. The place Roman and I sometimes went when we wanted more than just an afternoon. The charge was for a room and an expensive dinner from their room service menu. It was from a night I had told Leo I was working late at the gallery. I stared at the paper, and my mouth went dry. There was no lie big enough to cover this. There was no performance that could erase it. It was a fact, printed in black and white. "I called the gallery," Leo said, his voice devoid of any emotion. "They said there was no event that night. They said you left at 5 o'clock, like usual." I looked up at him. The wounded, apologetic man was gone. In his place was a stranger with cold, empty eyes. He wasn't angry. He was just done. The wall he had been building for months was finally complete, and I was on the wrong side of it. The silence stretched on. There was nothing to say. No defense. No escape. And when the panic and the fear finally subsided, something else took their place. Something ugly and furious. If I was going down, I wasn't going down quietly. A laugh escaped my lips, a harsh, brittle sound. "So what? You caught me. Do you want a medal?" He flinched as if I'd slapped him. "Zoe." "No," I snapped, standing up, my entire body trembling with a rage I hadn't known I possessed. "You don't get to say my name like that. Not now. You want the truth? Fine. Here's the truth. Yes, I slept with someone else. And I'd do it again. Do you have any idea how suffocating it is to live with you? To spend your life with someone so beige? So predictable and weak?" The words poured out of me, a torrent of cruelty I had held back for years. "You think going to the gym and growing a beard suddenly makes you a man? It doesn't. You're still the same scared little boy who wouldn't even call back the delivery guy. Roman. Roman is a man. He's passionate. He's alive. He's everything you're not. You want to know why I did it, Leo?" I was shouting now, tears of pure fury streaming down my face. "I did it because of you. You drove me to it. Your weakness, your boredom, your pathetic, dependable nature. You're not a husband. You're a safety net. And I'm tired of being safe. I want to live." I finally ran out of breath, my chest heaving. The ugly words hung in the air between us, shimmering with venom. I had burned everything to the ground. Leo stood there and took it all. He didn't flinch. He didn't argue. He just listened, his face a mask of stone. When I was finished, when there was nothing left but the sound of my own ragged breathing, he nodded slowly. "I see," he said. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a shard of glass. "Thank you for being honest." He turned and walked out of the bedroom. I heard him moving around in the living room, the sound of a zipper, the clicking of a drawer. A few minutes later, he appeared in the doorway, holding a duffel bag. "I'm going to stay with Greg," he said. "My lawyer will be in touch with you next week." And then he said the two words that I had, in my arrogance, never thought I would hear from him. The two words that ended everything. "I want a divorce." He didn't wait for a response. He just turned and walked out the front door, closing it softly behind him. The click of the latch echoed in the silent, empty house. In the first few days after Leo left, I felt a strange, manic sense of freedom. The anchor was gone. I was free to float, to fly. I called Roman, my voice bright and triumphant. "He's gone," I said. "He knows everything, and he left. We don't have to hide anymore." There was a pause on the other end of the line. A long, telling pause. "Wow," Roman said, his voice lacking the enthusiasm I had expected. "Zoe, that's a lot." "It's great," I insisted. "It's what we wanted, right?" "Listen," he said, and I could hear the sound of his restaurant in the background, the clatter of plates, the murmur of conversation. "Things are crazy here right now. Can I call you back?" He never did. I texted him a few days later. He replied with something vague about needing some space, about things being too complicated right now. Just like that, my passionate, decisive hero, my escape, revealed himself to be just another tourist. He had enjoyed the thrill of the affair, but he had no interest in dealing with the wreckage. He vanished. The next blow was the silence. My phone stopped ringing. Invitations to parties and dinners, which had once filled my calendar, dried up completely. I realized, with a sickening lurch, that all those people, Greg and his wife, all of Leo's circle, they were never my friends. They were his, and they had chosen their side. I was an outcast. The divorce was swift and clinical. Leo was fair. He didn't fight me on the house. He just wanted out. I got the beautifully curated home, and he got his freedom. It felt like a hollow victory. The silence in the house became my constant companion. Every empty room, every piece of furniture we had picked out together, seemed to mock me. I started spending more and more time at the gallery, but even that felt different. The stories the art told seemed to be about loss and regret. Months went by. I fell into a routine. Work, home, wine, sleep. One night, scrolling numbly through my social media feed, I saw a picture. It was posted by Greg's wife, a group shot from a weekend barbecue. And there, in the middle of it all, was Leo. He was smiling. A real, easy smile I hadn't seen on his face in years. He looked happy. He was thinner, stronger, and standing next to him, with her hand resting comfortably on his arm, was the art teacher, Sarah. She was looking up at him, and he was looking down at her, and the look on their faces told a story that needed no caption. It hit me like a physical blow. I felt the air leave my lungs. He had moved on. He had found someone who didn't see him as a project to be fixed or a punchline to a joke. Someone who looked at him with respect. I closed my laptop and sat there in the dark, the glow of the screen still imprinted on my eyes. The justifications, the blame, all the intricate lies I had told myself for so long, they all fell away. And for the first time, I was left alone with the stark, uncurated truth. I had destroyed my own life. I had taken a good, dependable man and broken him. And then I had mocked him for being broken. I had mistaken his kindness for weakness, his stability for boredom. A thought, quiet and terrifying, surfaced in my mind. Maybe I was the problem all along. But as quickly as it came, the old habits, the old defenses, rushed back in to protect me. I took a long sip of wine, the bitterness stinging my throat. He never really fought for me, though, did he? A stronger man wouldn't have just given up. He would have fought for me. In the end, I thought, staring at my own faint reflection in the dark window, maybe we just weren't the right pieces for each other's collections. It was a more comfortable story to tell, and I knew I would be telling it to myself for a very, very long time.